Hi, welcome back to the podcast slash YouTube channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Rennie. Nice to meet you. Um, I'm back with another episode. This is going to be a very candid one. I want to talk about healing the abandonment wound, and I specifically want to talk about chasing. This is something that I, as a BPD girly, have struggled with for a long time. And I want to talk about this because I think that we talk a lot about the diagnostic labels, the symptoms of, BPD. And I want to, for those of you who are newer, just finding me, I want to express that I am actually not someone who overly relies or identifies with labels in general, just across the board. But I understand that that's just human nature and it's like how we understand each other and how we attempt to understand ourselves, and that it can be helpful. I just think that I'm in the stage of my healing. And I think that once you've been doing this for a number of years and you've had success with recovery, you kind of get to this place. I mean, to each their own, but a lot of times I feel or I find that people who end up exploring more decolonized practices like I have are less inclined to over-identify with the diagnostic labels because those are subject to change anyway as people are researching more. So I just want to say, like, I am someone who is now approaching my healing from a way more holistic, humanistic, and also decolonized and very spiritual perspective, rather than the traditional Western, highly clinical, and in my opinion, very soulless way that we look at the human experience in healing. And so when I say BPD, it's with the understanding that people can use that label to identify certain patterns of behaviors and wounds that we have in common. So I just wanted to put that out there for those of you who are just finding me so that you can understand the way that I communicate these topics. And this might not resonate with all of you because I do touch on these topics from this place that I'm at now in a very spiritual way. So, with where I'm at now in my recovery, I have really struggled pretty much my whole life with a very severe abandonment wound and a very severe rejection sensitivity as a result of that. And I have been this year, especially, really deep in the depths of my shadow, really working through that wound. And it's not been easy. It's brought up a lot of the worst parts of myself. So when I talk about splitting, like I talked about in like my previous episode, um, that is like a behavior that I've had, or, consistently chasing people, or even to the point of harassment in some instances where I just felt such a strong fight or flight response to perceived rejection or abandonment to where it's like now I'm crossing people's boundaries because I want to try to force them to give me love. And when I really like stepped back and started to explore this, one thing that I realized was, first of all, like, and I talked about this before too, but half the time it wasn't really the people. It really wasn't the people that I really wanted. I convinced myself of that, but it was not actually the person, right? It was always something much deeper than that. And so what I had to really focus on was going back to the core, the root of what's causing this wound. Because oftentimes I would end up chasing people that, if I'm looking at it from a very objective, non-emotional, non-dysregulated, non-disordered lens, did not deserve it, did not deserve it. Oftentimes people who were extremely emotionally unavailable, who were breadcrumbing, and who were frankly takers, just consistently okay with receiving attention and receiving love and receiving whatever because, ego boost, but not actually giving anything. And a lot of times what was happening was I was making up these scenarios in my head. So I was really like living in my own delusions of what something could potentially be. And so I think I spent a number of years looking at relationships through the lens of potential rather than what was actually happening in reality. And I think this was also connected to my maladaptive coping mechanisms of um, one, maladaptive daydreaming, and two, disassociating. So there was already this issue of me being so disconnected from reality, and then also me living in my head and in these thoughts that when I would meet people, I would just see the potential. And as I've been healing, I've realized that that is honestly a gift to look at someone and to feel love for them because you can see the potential of who they are. But obviously, the problem with that is it's not rooted in or grounded in anything real. Um, and so, yeah, this will lead to a whole host of issues with me, like believing that I'm falling in love, which oftentimes was not love, it was limerence, because now as I'm learning, love is not something that can be forced. It's not force, that's control, and that is rooted in trauma. That's not love. And so learning to separate what I was perceiving as love, first thing, which was actually limerence, which was actually trauma response, and then realizing that the potential versus the reality are two separate things. And now I need to learn how to see the reality and accept the reality, which is something I'm still learning, and it's really hard to do. And then also just understanding that I'm so disconnected that I don't even feel safe enough to be present in the reality of what's actually happening half the time because I'm so disconnected from myself. I'm so disassociated anyway. So lots of layers to this, but essentially, I think a lot of us who are diagnosed with BPD, or just in general have some type of severe complex trauma and abandonment wound, really struggle with chasing. And as someone who, as I just described, have taken this to the extreme, I don't want to say stalker. I've never followed someone. I don't have the energy and interest. I'm not Joe from you. I'm not interested in getting in my car and following people around. But I have definitely been someone who, even after people were like, hey, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I was like, well, that's just too damn bad. Because you're going to keep hearing from me. So I've definitely been someone who just didn't give a crap about people's boundaries when I felt a strong connection or pull towards them. And what I've been really learning in this season, because that's come up a lot as I've been navigating this separation and going back into dating, um, as that has come up and I've been trying to communicate very honestly about what I struggle with so that people are warned in advance, but as those behaviors again appear, it's really given me the opportunity to sit with why, like where did those traits come from in the first place, and how do we actually heal the abandonment wound? Because people talk about it all the time. And I think that's like kind of my frustration with a lot of the content around mental health in general and healing in general is that we talk so much about being aware of these things that I feel like a lot of people have some level of awareness. And that's kind of where you're getting people that are like self-diagnosing, which is valid, by the way. I did before I was formally diagnosed. Um, I feel like the awareness, though, is just the beginning. And what comes next is actually embodying and practicing. And again, it takes practice. And so there will be instances where you fail. And I've been in my practice season. I've been in my practice season and I feel like I'm officially entering a season where I'm just like done chasing. Like I feel confident enough in myself now. And this has taken so many years that I'm both exhausted and drained and overwhelmed, but also really grateful because it's not easy. And so I want to talk about that because healing abandonment wounds are not easy. And again, everyone's just talking about it online, but no one's talking about how to do it. So let me just say what I have been doing, some of the things that I've been doing that I feel like with time and patience and practice have added up to me now getting to the point where I'm kind of just fed up, you know? So obviously a big part of the abandonment wound is rooted in self-worth and it's rooted in trauma. So first things first, obviously, is actually being radically honest about the core wound, the trauma, which is hard. People choose to do this in therapy with support of others. People choose to do this with plant medicine with the support of, community or peers or elders. Some people choose to do this completely alone in silo. I've kind of dabbled in all of those, but I primarily have done a lot of my healing alone. I'm definitely entering a season where I don't want to anymore, and I feel like community is important, but I digress. I have navigated much of this alone, which is incredibly difficult to do, and a lot of people don't. The statistics of people who survive these things and make it to my age are low. And so I want to give myself a pat on the back that I'm still here because there are many times that I have attempted to and did not want to be. So I just want to start there because I want to express that none of the things that I'm saying are easy. And I don't want to make it sound like it is. I don't want to come across like the other people who are communicating these things like, just journal and you'll be fine. Just meditate and you'll be fine. No. People who have very deep core abandonment wounds, this shit is hard. It will take time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you. It's possible, but I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like you're gonna watch this video and then have the awareness and then immediately be better. Because I think that's setting us up for failure and it's just no, like it's hard. It's really hard. It's really uncomfortable. You will crash out. You will have mental breakdowns. You will have a hard time, but it's worth it and it's necessary. But I think the most important thing is learning to come back to yourself. And I think that that is the hardest thing to do because what happens when you've been abandoned, especially if it happened really early in your life, like it did for me, is that you essentially learn subconsciously to abandon yourself. You learn to shrink yourself. You learn to become palatable or become who you think you need to be in order for people to love you. You learn that love is conditional. And I think as a society, we are kind of all conditioned to believe that love is conditional and that we should earn it and that it's something that we need to give ourselves away to the point to where we feel drained and like half the time we lose our sense of self. And I think that a lot of people who have been diagnosed with BPD or who struggle with abandonment wounds are accustomed to losing themselves in relationships. And I think that a lot of us most likely didn't really feel seen growing up. Like we just didn't feel seen or heard. And so there's already like this lack of understanding of self. And it's really uncomfortable to be in your own energy if your whole life you've kind of been conditioned to disconnect from yourself. To you're disassociated, so you're not connected to your physical body. You're maladaptive daydreaming, so you're not really your brain is focused on other things and other scenarios and not really yourself. And you're not really pouring into yourself. And likely you didn't have relationships where people were really pouring into you. And this is not to say that everyone had like the most traumatic childhood like I did. You might have had people in your life who loved you and supported you, but like that doesn't mean that your emotional needs were met or that um you were taught to value yourself in the way that's required to have healthy relationships later in life, right? Like people could have people around them who showed them love, but that doesn't mean that all their needs were met. And so I just want you to know that if you struggle with these things and you feel like you don't relate to conversations about like severe trauma or things like that, just know that like there are so many things that could be impacting you on a subconscious level, even if your life seemed quote unquote normal, or even if you feel like you had a quote unquote normal childhood. Like, but did you feel seen? Did you feel like supported emotionally? And that's not just with your family, but like at school or in the things that you were interested in. Like with friends, the people actually care about learning about who you are and that they encourage you to learn about who you are. Because I feel like a lot of us actually did not have that, even if we did grow up in environments that were considered normal or loving. Like we might not have had people who actually encouraged us to develop a strong sense of self and really get to know ourselves. So then obviously that coupled with abandonment issues means that we're going to have to spend a lot of time actually getting to know ourselves. And that feels scary and also unfulfilling. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, if you've been conditioned to look outside of yourself your whole life for validation, for love, then it doesn't even feel fulfilling the thought of connecting with yourself and pouring into yourself. When people talk about learning to love yourself, everyone talks about it, but like the truth of the matter is that it's not appealing, to be honest, if you're someone who spent your whole life so disconnected from yourself. And especially like if this has been on a subconscious level to the point where you haven't been consciously aware, or maybe you're just now becoming consciously aware of it. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you're a confident person and this is not even an issue for you. Again, like a lot of this can be really, really deeply rooted in subconscious. But the fact of the matter is that humans are wired for connection, and it doesn't really feel fulfilling to learn about yourself if you spent your whole life self-loathing or just not really understanding or had no interest or encouragement to get to know yourself. So the idea of like dating yourself and studying yourself is probably going to feel uncomfortable and weird and even boring or just not interesting. Like you just might not feel like you're getting what you need. And when it comes to that, one thing I will say is that for me, I had always associated love with like these intense emotional experiences, meaning like if someone became my FP, which we call favorite person in the BPD community, which is someone that we basically fall into limerence with. We become like really emotionally entangled with this person and emotionally enmeshed and sometimes codependent, most of the time codependent. And it becomes very obsessive, like we fixate on this person. And that can feel really intense in a way that it feels as if it's filling this void or this emptiness that feels innate in all of us, which again, I don't think that it is now that I've done a deep amount of healing, but it feels like that. And the idea of spending our time actually getting to know ourselves doesn't feel that way. Like that, the intensity that you feel with that person that you meet that just you're full limerence with and you're fixated on. When you're alone and you're getting to know yourself, you don't feel that feeling. And so I just want to talk about that first and foremost because I think that that is actually a barrier that not enough people talk about. It's that you become addicted to that sensation. But I just want you to understand something. That feeling might seem like it's coming from the other person that you're fixated on, but it's not. It's coming from you. You are the one that's experiencing these intense emotions. You are the one who is feeling deeply. And you have to basically train yourself to be able to get these same types of feelings from yourself. And I'll be honest, it's not going to be as extreme or as intense, but that's because it's not really supposed to be. And that intensity that you're feeling oftentimes is not rooted in things that are healthy, right? It's trauma. And we become so addicted to it. Like it's like a dopamine hit for us. It's like a drug. And so you have to withdraw from that. And I have found that the way to do that is by experimenting with things outside of just romantic relationships that bring you pleasure, which can be really difficult to do, especially if you are someone who navigates like depressive episodes, right? Because then you struggle with nothing feeling fulfilling, right? And that's going to take a lot of time to work through and a lot of support. And I kind of touch on like navigating depressive episodes in previous episodes, so I encourage you to go look at those. But what I have been doing is one, I talk a lot about nervous system regulation. So finding things that regulates my nervous system so that then my brain can kind of get used to more of a calm state. Because again, if you're only used to intensity, it's going to feel so boring and so dull and so unfulfilling to learn to kind of come back to a level baseline. And I feel like it's kind of required to try to get your brain and your body into that regulated state so that you can start to get used to what it feels like to be with yourself and to be calm and to not be like in the intensity of those like you know, obsessive relationship dynamics. And it's so uncomfortable. So, things that I've done, the first thing that I started to do very early in my recovery is I found a spot in nature. Again, a lot of the things that I'm saying are gonna sound cliche and it might piss you off because you're gonna think, oh, I've heard these things a million times, I tried it, it doesn't work for me. But everything that you do, it's all about the intention you put into it. It's not just doing the things and ticking it off your to-do list and then expecting things to change. Like it's the intention you put in it. So the first intentional practice that I had that wasn't like forced by some therapist or provider was finding a spot in nature. So I actually went to the beach. Luckily, I live in California. And I found like this secluded spot at the beach, and I would consistently go there like once a week. Lately I've actually been feeling like I need to find a new spot and do that weekly because I stopped doing that weekly, but I would literally go to the same spot every week. I would pack up books, I would pack up journals, I would pack up my tarot cards, my crystals, water, all the things. I would sit there and it became a habit that I formed unintentionally. I actually did not start this like I didn't initially start it intentionally, but it became intentional with time. Um, and I would talk to the ocean. I would write in my journal whatever I was feeling, whatever was coming up, whatever I was struggling with. I would read. I would listen to music that relaxed me. And I would ground. I would just sit in the sun. And I would stay there like as long as I could. Sometimes I would stay there all day. And it was really regulating for me to be in that environment, and I felt very safe. And I think finding safe environments where you feel safe by yourself, honestly, is one of the greatest first steps you can take into establishing your relationship with yourself. Because over time, I didn't realize it at first, but it was like I was dating myself. The more that I would go there and journal and sit, the more I started to understand certain things about myself. Sometimes I would just like read certain parts of my journals back to me. Like I would take old journals because I've been journaling for a long time and just read it. And, that was a space that was about me. And thinking back, that was like the first time, at least in my adult life, that I can think of that I actually really had a space that was just for me and was just about me. Um, and I feel like that is so important to find spaces like that and to be intentional about it and to date yourself. Like, pack yourself some food, take your journals, and spend time with yourself. And if you struggle with journaling, I really encourage you to look into prompts and things that will help you dive deeper into your own psyche and help you understand new aspects of yourself. Sometimes it's also helpful to have, if you are lucky enough to have like aligned relationships, friendships, connections with people who can ask you these types of questions or even interview you so that you can start to really understand yourself on a deeper level. Because if there's one thing that I've learned throughout this recovery and meeting other people who struggle with complex trauma and abandonment wounds and BPD, a lot of these people are highly sensitive, like myself, and we are really sweet people at our core, regardless of like the mistakes that we've made or the actions that we've had, because I know that we caused a lot of harm because of our pain, but that doesn't mean that at our core we're bad people. And I feel a lot of people who struggle with this are actually super sweet, sensitive souls. And it's like if we just spend time actually getting to know who we are, that feeling of self-loathing, we could heal that. But anyway, I digress. So finding a space for yourself and spending time with yourself, taking yourself on dates. Um, I think this year especially has been a year where I was like, let me actually just do stuff that I want to do because I realized that I was like waiting for that someone or person in order for me to go do things that I wanted to do. Like I wasn't going to the movies unless I was going with someone. I wasn't going to restaurants unless I was going with someone. I wasn't going out to like music events or whatever unless I was going with someone. And this is also because like obviously there's a lot of trauma, so there's like a lot of fear and I spend a lot of time by myself because of that. But I feel like I've been doing a lot of immersion therapy and just trying to go out and do things just because I want to do it and not waiting for someone else. Like, let me just go do it myself. Because I feel like what happens again is when you're used to losing yourself in relationships, you're waiting to live your life for when someone else comes in. Like you're not really living, you're waiting. It's like every time I was going somewhere to find that person or that thing, then that would then make me feel like I was alive because otherwise I felt empty all the time. And it's been like this year where I've been like really intentional about connecting with myself and finding other things that could make me feel fulfilled, which again takes time because you have to withdraw from the dopamine rush of limerence and fixations and intense relationship dynamics. So at first it doesn't feel like anything. And so that's another thing. Like when you do go on these things, like let's say you take yourself out to dinner by yourself or you take yourself to the movies. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that like when you do that, you're immediately gonna feel better. Some people do. Some people do. Some people do that and they're like, I love this. But if you struggle with more complex trauma, and serious illness, like what I'm talking about, you probably won't. I'm gonna be real with you. Because I would watch these videos where people were like, oh my God, like I went on my solo day and it changed my life and I feel incredible. And as someone who's been depressed for the greater half of my life, I can't relate to that. I cannot relate to that. Like I started taking myself out and I immediately regretted it. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not going to lie about how difficult this is. Immediately I was like, I want to go home. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like people are staring at me. Again, I also have social anxiety. I feel unsafe because in most of these environments too, there were like obviously random men and I'm like I've struggled with the fear of men my whole life, which is something I've been healing. Um, there are a number of reasons why I felt so uncomfortable, but that's the thing. It was a form of like immersion therapy because the more that I did it, the less fear I felt and the more comfortable I started to feel. And also, it gave me the opportunity to actually find spaces that did feel safe, right? Because, yeah, there were some spaces that just weren't for me. And then there were other spaces where I was like, okay, like I like the people here, I like the environment here, I feel okay here. And it was really grounding because I think you spend so much time in your head fixating on these people and situations and relationships that when I would go out, it was such a nice way to get my mind off of all of the things happening up in here and ground myself. And then as I ground myself, that's an opportunity to connect with myself. Because now it's like, okay, I'm here, I'm present. And being present is honestly the most important thing that you have to learn to do when you're learning to reconnect with yourself, when you're healing this wound. And so, challenging yourself through the discomfort of taking yourself out, obviously be safe and do whatever you need to do to feel safe, but do that on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be something you pay for. Like you could just go to the park and sit down. Like I actually started finding different random parks and would just take my blanket out and sit down and like read a book. And because I was so uncomfortable being in social settings and being around random people, I wouldn't stay long. And sometimes when I go out, I still don't stay long. Like I went out today because I realized I was like hermiting. I was cooping myself up again because I am once again struggling because of these situations. And so I decided to take myself out on a walk. And I ended up staying for like an hour, which is good for me. It used to be like I would literally drive somewhere and stay there for literally like 10 to 15 minutes and be like, nope, and leave. And hey, if that's how it starts for you, then that's just how it has to be. I think the whole point though is that you're attempting something different and it's over time going to lead to changes that I think will help you deepen your relationship with yourself, even if it's really, really uncomfortable in the beginning. So I still encourage you to try it. And then next, like finding community. This is where I'm at now in my journey is as I have been going out and finding spaces and exploring, learning to trust people and learning that there are so many ways to experience love. And one thing that I've learned through the experience of attempting, sometimes failing, oftentimes failing, because I have historically been a loner throughout my recovery. But I've been learning that it didn't really feel fulfilling to me or frankly interesting to me to receive love from anyone other than the person that I wanted it from. And again, I think I talked about this last time too, but like I didn't realize until I started to do these things that I had a really rigid way of looking at receiving love. And so I think one thing that those of us with an abandonment wound can struggle with is just feeling love, like not feeling loved, right? But the thing of that is that that lack of emotional permanence was really interfering with my ability to see that there were other ways of being fulfilled and other ways of experiencing love, not just in this rigid dogmatic way that I was perceiving it, rooted in my trauma. And so learning to go out and connect with people and then actually giving them the opportunity to get to know me and not immediately like shutting down or becoming avoidant, that has been really hard for me because again, like it was like if it wasn't from the specific person that I wanted it to be from, then it's like I was like a block of ice. Like I was not interested in genuinely connecting with other people. But then I started to meet people that I genuinely could relate to and that genuinely made me feel safe and heard and special and you know starting to make friends like that it awakened something within me. It can be really healing to be in community for this reason because it awakened within me that obviously there's something that they're seeing that I'm not seeing, right? Or that I wasn't allowing myself to see, but also that there are so many different ways that we can experience love. And it can be so emotionally fulfilling to find people and spaces that make you feel truly seen. And it can also highlight to you where a lot of the relationships you were so fixated on weren't even making you feel that way. And you were chasing after things that weren't really good for you. And so that's kind of what was highlighted for me as I started to go into these spaces and take myself out and meet people is there are genuinely good people in the world who do want to love you, and our trauma and our pain can block that. We can self-sabotage that and we can push people away. And this like very rigid way of thinking about love can keep us stuck in this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of not feeling love because we're actually not allowing ourselves to receive it in all of the different ways that we can receive it. Um, and so I feel like this is also part of the process. So I know a lot of these things are external, but I just want to like note that as you're doing these things, you're learning things about yourself. As you're taking yourself out into these environments and allowing yourself to meet new people and make new friends and try new hobbies, the intention is that you are learning something about yourself, right? I'm not saying to go out and do these things so that you can then use these things as a method of distracting yourself from your favorite person or whatever you are fixated on. I'm not saying these things so that you can then seek to only get fulfillment from these things because again, that's still external and that is the pattern that you have to break when you have abandonment wounds is looking for it outside of yourself. But instead is using these experiences to deepen your understanding of who you are and what you need and what you have and haven't been allowing into your life and like the parts of yourself that you haven't allowed yourself to really connect with or explore or heal, frankly. And so when you're going out and you're trying these things, I think it's important to be asking yourself questions. Treat it like an experiment. Like if you go somewhere and you leave and you feel not that great, like ask yourself why. Like what came up for you? And then really practice deciphering, and this is going to take time, but deciphering whether what came up for you was rooted in fear and trauma or if it was rooted in some actual like tangible truth of, maybe people in the space were acting crazy or, maybe it genuinely was unsafe. But I think that a big part of this process is self-trust because reconnecting with ourselves requires self-trust. And a lot of us don't learn this. A lot of us do not learn how to trust ourselves. And so, of course, it's going to be hard to heal this wound because we don't even trust ourselves. Like, how are we going to do it if we don't trust ourselves? And so, this process, in my opinion, is like a really good start at learning how to do that because I'm still in the process because, again, this stuff takes time. I really have made a lot of mistakes. But the amount of growth that I've had, even if, maybe to other people they don't see it, but again, like don't dictate your healing off of what other people see because you might meet someone, lash out on them, and then they're like, "Oh, you're a terrible person," but they don't know like everything you went through to get to where you are and everything you might have overcome. So don't let that stop you from continuing. I just wanted to take a break to say that because I think it's important. But that's something that I have been learning as I have been doing these things is, how do I show up in these spaces? Like, do I feel safe in these spaces? Like, can I tell when a space is for me or an environment is for me or people are for me? And because I have been forcing myself and super uncomfortable doing so, I have learned this. And it has really helped me kind of shed light on how I show up and why I show up the way that I do. Because I'm extremely closed off and avoidant in general community spaces until I find like a person or, it's usually like one person that I'm like, I trust you. I don't even know you, but I trust you. And then I like, they're like my bestie and I cling to them. But then it's, then I would meet someone that I then fixate on and it become like my favorite person. And it's like I'm willing to lose myself for this person. Like I'm willing to give everything. I'm willing to give more than I'm giving to myself. Case in point, I would lose sleep if I needed to. If I wanted to hear from the person could text me whenever and I would respond whenever, no matter what I was doing, no matter if I was busy or working, I would always respond if it was my favorite person. Or maybe I was struggling with my own things, but I still would prioritize whatever it is that they were going through over my own issue. If someone else was struggling, I would drop everything to help them. And this recent cycle of these patterns resurfacing actually highlighted to me how I've done this so many times. Like this has been a consistent pattern for me. I look back at how I used to even do these things like in high school or college where it'd be like, oh, I have 3 tests this week, but my favorite person wants to hang out, so I'm gonna go hang out with them, even though I'm really overwhelmed and I have 3 tests and I need to focus on a test. Or I'm failing my science class, but I'm gonna help this person like write their paper. I'm gonna like do all their work for them. Like I've always been giving more than I should have, and more than I was ever receiving in these dynamics. And the more that I allowed myself to go into this immersion therapy and go into the world and try new things and date myself and meet new people and really connect with myself and connect with others as well, the more I saw like, I can see things differently now because my head is not fully solely wrapped up in that situation because we get so fixated and so lost on that to the point to where it's all we think about and it's all we see. And I think that at the very least, taking yourself out and spending time with yourself, even if you don't really find it fun in the beginning, is a good way to start to step into reality, like be grounded in what's actually happening so you can see things more clearly. Again, this requires you to be in a more regulated state, which takes time. I'm not saying this is going to work if you are someone who is still highly dysregulated and you do need support if that's the case. But if you are someone who's been doing this for some time and you're still struggling with these patterns, then it might be time to really deepen that time that you spend with yourself and time you spend being grounded, because then you can see things from a completely different perspective. And again, it's still going to take time because these patterns are subconsciously, like they're habitual. And even if you become aware of it, you're still gonna unintentionally start to do these things because that's just what you're used to. And unlearning this core belief that you have to basically sacrifice yourself to be loved, to lose yourself in a relationship, to give, to be loved, like undoing the core belief that caused that is really hard and it's going to take time. And I'm just now like entering, I think, a stage of my life where I'm like, I don't want to be this way anymore. But what it's taken to get to this point is just a lot of pain, honestly. Like a lot of heartbreak, a lot of chaos, a lot of like dramatic, intense dynamics with people, some that were more romantic and some that were just delusions, to be honest. But that's just the reality. That's what it's like. And like for the first time in my life, I'm like, I don't feel compelled to chase anybody. And I think learning to do that without disconnecting from your heart and without becoming an avoidant, that is the next biggest obstacle. And that's where I'm at now. Because a lot of people do that. A lot of people then decide I'm done, like giving, 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 but then they take the other extreme and they become avoidant. I think a lot of men in society end up doing this, right? Then they become avoidant. And then if you're avoidant, you're not open to receiving love at all. You're not going to be fulfilled at all because you're not going to let anybody in. So I don't want to ever be someone that closes my heart. I think that our sensitivity is our superpower. But again, I think that learning to reconnect with ourselves is the first step. So, I've said a lot of words and I'm gonna stop because I could just keep talking. I want to share more like specific practices and things that I've been doing that's helped me reconnect because to be honest, I think the things that I try to mention here are practical, but honestly, a lot of that work is happening internally and is deeply spiritual for me. So I want to talk about it from that perspective next time. So I think I'll continue this conversation because I think healing abandonment wounds, to me anyway, is a spiritual wound. Um, Especially if it's something that happened like really young, really early in life. And I definitely think it's going to take more than just these practices that I mentioned to really help you reconnect with yourself and remember who you actually are and what you're actually worthy of. So I do want to have a conversation about that, but I'm tired, so I'm gonna stop talking. So thank you for listening up until now. If you do like hearing me yap, then I encourage you to subscribe, follow all the things, and until next time, bye.